hair down past their collar, and them girls not wearing dresses, and he goes, and them people slinking into the back rows of church. This is what's wrong with the church in America. And I'm thinking, dude, bro, you are what's wrong with the church in America. Now, here's the thing. My boys, I don't anticipate they'll have hair past their collars. And my girls, they like wearing dresses and skirts, and I like them in dresses and skirts. And the back row of our church, I don't see anybody slinking. I see people sitting. I mean, you know what slinking is? Slinking is like, like no one did that today, right? Maybe last Sunday I wasn't watching. Ray and Pearl may have pulled something off that I didn't see, right? But as far as I know, no one's slinking anywhere. We're just having a blast in church. And there's a lot of people who don't sit in the front row because it's the spit pit. It's the spout where the glory comes out, and it's loud. And so who knows, right? So I don't know. I was just thinking about that, right? Thinking about what's wrong with the church in America. Man, I tell you what, maybe if you just focus on the Bible and focused on being timeless rather than trendy, we might get a little closer to what's wrong with the church in America. Interestingly, that's actually what we're talking about today. It's an interesting survey of what's wrong with the church in America. You say, oh boy, here we go. We're in for a lecture. I know, you kind of are, but there's lots of slides, and I use like at least 20 different transitions, fun ways of making the words appear on the screen. So that should make up for something. So there, you know what? I will incorporate. Actually, there's plenty of times in this lesson where I ask questions, so that will be plenty of candy opportunity. It will be sweet. All right. Oh, boy. All right. Blessed assurance. Aren't you thankful for the blessed assurance? And I tell you what, we talked about just briefly this morning after Sunday school about how when we make commitments, it's not right for there to be an expectation of perfection from humans, right? Because we can't do it, so the effect of others. And the only one who could and should expect perfection by my accounts is Jesus. And even he says, I'm here for you when you fall. And you think about marriages, and when we stand there and we make these vows, and we say, I'm going to love you, I'm going to provide for you, I'm going to whatever you say in your vows, but the pretty basic ones are to love and to cherish. Have there been days, sir, when you didn't love and cherish your wife? All right, nobody wants to. Yeah, look, it's cool. It's cool. Yeah. Every time you're not treating her like Jesus, you're not loving her. And maybe you didn't use the older vows, maybe you have newer vows, but the vows that I use when I do weddings is when the woman is to honor, obey. And people say, obey. I know, modern Western chauvinism, and it can be abused, but the relationship between, I'm not just wasting your time, I'm just wasting your time. The relationship between Christ and the church is the relationship between father and husband and wife. They're reciprocal, you see. And anytime a marriage fails to do that, we fail each other. We fail our spouses. When we sing Blessed Assurance, Jesus is mine, I don't say that with any doubt that he's going to run off on me. I don't say that with any doubt that I'm going to mess up so bad that he says, I've had enough of you. Jesus is the friend of sinners, which makes it possible for him to be my friend. So let's sing this together with that in mind. Would you play the introduction for me, Laura?
Can you hear me? Okay. Oh boy. I'll get it. There it is. Okay. I'll be reading from Psalms 100, one of those songs that we learned when we were on the bus routes, and we had it memorized, but I don't know if I have it memorized now or not. I have a lot of songs memorized. I don't memorize them to memorize them. I memorize them because they knew, David pretty much knew how to pray to God.
Yeah.
It's one thing that I don't know how to do is pray. So if I can try to copy them and try to mean the words, it might do a lot for me than just, Lord, be merciful and thank you for this day or whatever. Those simple prayers, Psalms are very heavy, loaded prayers, and I want to learn them. Not to be like David, because I'm definitely not going to be like David, but to have a heart like David, because we can all have that. Psalms 100. Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all ye lands. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before his presence with singing. Know ye that the Lord, he is God. It is he that hath made us, and not we ourselves. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. Be thankful unto him and bless his holy name. For the Lord is good, his mercy is everlasting, and his truth endureth to all generations. It's a beautiful, beautiful Psalms. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, as we come to you, Lord, we thank you, we praise you, we glorify your name, Father. Thank you, Father, for dying for us and giving us life, Father. Help us, Father, to realize, Father, that you're never going to leave us nor forsake us. That's a promise of you, Lord. Help us, Father, to trust, to hang on to that, Lord, and that you're never going to give us more than we can handle in this life, Father. Help us, Father, to love you, to serve you, and to serve you with all of our hearts, Lord. Be with our preachers who stand behind this pulpit, Father, and thank you for him. Continue to bless him. Continue to give him strength, Father, to overcome evil, to overcome the flesh, Father, that wants to destroy us, Father. Thank you, Father, so much for your love and mercy. Bless your message and help us to have ears to hear so we can apply it to our lives, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Up, and it's Ray's fault. And you're going to have to help me because I don't remember what the passage is. There it is. I don't need your help after all. Psalm 19. Remain seated. We're going to sing the psalm. The Psalms, people say, hey, can we sing some newer songs? We're just singing older ones like Blessed Assurance. And I recognize they're older and we need to learn newer songs. One of them was what we were going to do today. But I'm taking a hard turn backwards in time. The Psalms, people say, oh, I don't pray prayers of other people. Why ever not? Well, it's vain repetition. Only if you vainly repeat it. Right? Come on, saints. People read through and pray through the Psalms regularly. In fact, many churches, even today, only sing the Psalms because they are so theologically rich and pure and wonderful. Now, what a lot of those churches may not know is even some of the Psalms are actually old songs written to other gods, such as Baal, and then Yahweh was placed in them instead. It was a really cool way of subversion. But anyways, more on that never. Psalm 19. So there's 3 verses, verse 7, verse 8, and verse 9, and there's a refrain in between each verse. So we sing 7, 10, 8, 10, 9, 10. How many of you have sung this psalm before? All right, we're going to have a quartet. Okay, good deal. No, I'm just joking. All right, if you know it, sing along. The It's a beautiful song, isn't it? Beautiful song. What? Is there more? You're pointing at Kevin. He's always in trouble. That doesn't surprise me.
You can actually use verse 11 as like a destiny. Lord over by them is necessary. And keep it on the head. There is great.
Well, I'm all about learning these things. So maybe at the end of the meeting today, we could sing through this again. Somebody remind me, and we'll dismiss with this psalm. Sound good? Awesome. Kev, would you come and offering and all that? That is a good song to have stuck in your head, isn't it? Like it's already stuck in my head. I love it. It almost has a haunting melody to it, doesn't it? Yeah. You say haunting. Our kids, they've been on us lately to tell ghost stories. Dad, tell us a ghost story. We refuse to scare our children. I don't know. Everybody's a little different, and that's fine. So all the ghost stories I tell have a joke as the punchline. And like the coffin who was chasing somebody after he passed a graveyard at night. And so we drag out the story and make it real long and creepy. And he chases a guy into the bathroom. And then the guy's huddled down in the bathroom, and there's a great big coffin standing there. And then the guy grabs a bottle of cough syrup and throws it at the coffin, and the coffin stops. I won't. Not on purpose, anyways. Not voluntarily. What's that?
One of my family used to scare us with the kids.
The ghost story? Oh, yeah. A lot of families have a lot of ghost stories. Yep. All right. As I was writing this sermon, so here's the thing, guys. This morning, knowing full well I wasn't going to preach from Acts, unless if there was going to be like a last-minute desperation move to hurriedly slap something together, I read Acts 19 through 28 this morning, and I thought, Kevin's a complete monster for setting us off on this series and then turning it over to me for me to do all by myself, and it's not really even fair. Thank you. It was off and now it's on. All right, good. The rest of this sermon through Paul, sermon series through Paul, there's a couple more that are more incidental. And then as I'm reading this through, the last 21 or so through 28, it's all like one episode of Law and Order. And you say, come on. No, it really is. Read it through, just chapters 21 to 28. It's all one long episode of Law and Order with a little bit of Pirates of the Caribbean in chapter 27. That's the rest of Acts. I don't know what my approach is going to be. I don't know how to do it. They don't teach you this stuff in Bible college. What they do teach you is, well, brother, you mine the text for an exegetical truth, and then you preach that text. Even if it's not there, right? You know what I mean? I'm not going to do that, right? I want to preach the word that is presented to you. And so I'm navigating through, sailing through island of Malta. Anyways, how to do that. I think I'm going to be able to preach one or two more messages. And then I'm going to take, I think, the majority of the last chapters in Acts, and we're just going to go from courthouse to courthouse. He went to multiple courthouses, so to speak, right? And then there was that part when Agrippa said, if he hadn't appealed to Caesar, we'd free him right now. And then he goes to Rome, and then you have 3 different occasions when Jewish Christians are like, don't go to Jerusalem, you're going to end up in chains. You know what I'm saying? And he was like, I'm going to do this. And then there's the big debate on was Paul right? The Holy Spirit of God was telling people, tell him, don't go to Jerusalem. But Paul was stubborn. That shouldn't surprise you about Paul. He set his face like flint everywhere he went. You know what I'm saying? It's really, really awesome stuff to talk about. But I don't feel like it's a right approach to the text to break it down like chapter by chapter by chapter by chapter. Luke's treatise here, or record, was not meant to be broken down, at least not toward the end like this. It wasn't. So I want to do justice to how Luke wanted us to understand this and read it. Does that make sense? So I know this sounds a little silly, and it sounds a little very Michael British to do. I may even set up like a little, I don't even know. I thought about doing like a video, like a 30-minute video, or set up like a courtroom drama or something. Like I know this sounds silly, but I'm really looking for a way to communicate all these events in Paul's life in a way that we'll be able to sustain like 30, 35 minutes, or we're just going to fizzle out. Even I would. You know what I'm saying? A way we can sustain and digest and say, wow, look at all of this that Paul did, and then we'll glean from it. And so if we're parked outside of Acts for the next week or two, it's because I'm really trying to put my nose to the grind and find the best way to approach that text faithfully and to the edification of my church. Does that make sense? All right, good stuff. Got a message though called Now More Than Ever. And I think Kevin let me know that's the name of a song, is it?
I'll cherish the crown.
Well, there it is. All right. At least it's not a song like on Wednesday. I quoted like 6 or 7 songs Wednesday night. My wife, when I got home, she goes, honey, we had a great time. Everything was good. And I'm like, all right, here, what's coming? No, she was great. She goes, some of the songs you mentioned, you might want to do a little bit of research on. And I was like, well, what's going on? She goes, well, the very next line talks about, and I'm like, I didn't know that. She goes, I know you didn't. And that's why I said, just maybe do a little research. So if I quote a song that's like got bad lyrics in it or something, please know that I'm quoting like the part I heard in like a commercial or something. Okay. The only part of the song that says I'm a Venus is from the Razor commercial. I'm a Venus. And then there's no closed caption, so I don't even know what the rest of it says. It rhymes with fire and desire. I think that's it. That's all I know of the song because it's on a commercial. So, Adam, you get this. You get this. All right.
Please let Arnold know that your reference for 80s music.
I will. I'm gonna just give like a slight nod or notice up, and you're gonna be like, just allowed. But I don't know though. I need a whole council of people, right? I'll start saying song names like one word at a time, and some of you can be like,
Pastor Mark, that's what
70s. Yeah, and I'm cool with 70s, right? But I grew up in the 80s, and the 80s is kind of and some of you guys are like, grew up in the 80s. I know, I'm young. I am. Yeah. Granted, to be very transparent, if I have to give the mental picture of growing up in a decade, it probably would be more the 90s, because I was still 4 or 5 in the 80s. And so really but when you live in Africa for half of the 90s, that's like you're in 60s. Because Africa is just catching up to the Western culture. Then you come back and you're like in the 2000s and you're like, wait a minute. Culture shock was really intense toward the turn of the millennium. When I came home, everybody was talking about Y2K. Remember that stuff? And, yeah. Yep. Now more than ever. I was going to assemble a lot of statistics, but I don't think it's going to take a lot of statistics to prove to you what I'm about to open up by saying. 12% of the U.S. population has stopped attending church in the last 25 years. 12%. In the last 25 years. That is a alarmingly high, staggeringly high number. Many articles have been written about this lately. The de-churching of America, the evangelicalizing of America. Why are the pews empty? And Barna polls, right? Barna Research, and all of these, marketing companies and pollsters will report the truth is that fewer and fewer of the incoming generation. It's relatively static around boomers and millennials. There's not as much flux, but Gen Z, Zoomers, as it were, a lot of flux, and the incoming generation is devastatingly unchurched. And you say, this scares me about the future of the church. And as an initial response, I sympathize with that. I do. I say, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? All right. Because I'm almost 40. I'm not 100, 200, 300 years old. You know what I'm saying? I don't have the luxury of looking back through time and saying, yes, this happened in Egypt forever ago. This happened in Rome forever ago. All I know is America. And all I know is what they call a stage 4 America. More discussion on that much, much later. But essentially 4 stages of America. There's when she was founded, when she grew, when she was at her peak, and now we're in the collapse of America. It was after the Patriot Act, but I'm not going to get into that either. Anyways, so all I know pretty much as an adult is a stage 4 America. In America where we're characterized by 2 things on 2 extremes, wokeism and workism. And this isn't going to be like a MAGA sermon or anything. It's not a political sermon. My point is that wokeism and workism are on 2 other ends of the spectrum. And sometimes they mingle. And I'm going to talk about those for a second. But the main point I'm trying to make to kick us off is that we are rapidly, and when I say rapidly, I don't mean, oh, the graph is going this way. The graph is plummeting to unchurched Americans. And we need to look at that and be honest instead of saying, well, maybe that's not accurate. No, there's no way to interpret the data otherwise. We are rapidly, within 2 generations, if nothing is done, we'll have an almost entirely unchurched America. You think now is bad? It's nothing. Now, Jake Meter, he writes pieces about this. He writes books. This is what he said. This change is bad news for America as a whole. Participation in a religious community generally correlates with better health outcomes, longer life, higher financial generosity, more stable families, all of which are desperately needed in a nation with rising rates of loneliness, mental illness, and alcohol and drug dependency. He's not wrong. Even if someone says, I'm staunchly atheistic, that's fine. You can believe the world exploded out of nowhere by nothing caused by itself. It takes more faith than I have. But even if you were staunchly atheist, you could still not deny the positive effects of a religious community on a society or an individual. All right? Y'all follow me so far? I know it sounds like a college lecture. This is not even a college level anything. It's like a junior high lecture. I'm not that great, but we're going to open our Bibles here in a bit, but I want to inductively lead up to that solution. Does that make sense? So stay tuned with me and then we'll get there. Okay. That we are being de-churched as a nation is no longer an idea about which we can speculate. It is a fact with which we must reckon. Does that make sense so far? We have to come to terms with this. This is what's happening. But how do we come to terms with this? How do we look at this? What angle should we look at the diamond through? You know, does that make sense? How do we look at it? Do we look at it by saying, oh, well, I guess Christianity is reaching obsolescence. It's a vintage religion, and we'll just wait for the next one to come and kind of take. Oh, sorry to break it to you, but there are no next ones. Russell Brand said this, and he's certainly not a Christian. Russell Brand said, we're a society of people that needs to worship. If we're not worshiping a God, we're worshiping ourselves. Russell Brand is a Hollywood actor. He's a funny one, but he's no philosopher. But he's onto something. Are you with me? He's onto something. We worship something. So even if we don't have organized religion, there's still going to be commitment and dedication to at least self. Church, this is what I'm going to talk to you about today. We must identify the actual reasons why people, maybe even future you or past you, are making church a lower priority than ever before. And again, this isn't a TED Talk. We're going to open the Bible in a bit. I just want to set the stage here. Maybe even future you will be a casualty of the de-churching of America. Maybe past you has been. Maybe you got out of church for a while because, as Kevin mentioned in Sunday school, hypocrites everywhere, right? We never count ourselves when we say that, of course. You know what I mean? It's always, yeah. The reasons why people are making church a lower priority than ever before might surprise you. But before there, what are some immediate suggestions? Why do you think some people are making church a lower priority than before? Let's hear it. Steve. Self. You can unpack that, or you can just hit me with another one. What do we think that means, Adam?
Probably too much entertainment.
Too much entertainment. Very, very good. Very, very good. Very insightful.
The cultural pressures are just very anti-God, anti-church.
Yep. The characterization of anti-intellectualism has been associated with the church. Means if you believe in all that invisible sky fairy, sky daddy stuff, you're nuts, right? That's been associated with it. Amber, then Kev.
I think people are interacting less with other people in general. So I think just, I mean, it has to do with self, but also just pulling away, and it's more like virtual. Like people become wrapped up in virtual life instead of real life.
I promise you, we did not discuss this sermon beforehand. We didn't. She didn't even know I was preaching on this. She never knows what I'm preaching on. That is one of my two main points, believe it or not. Yep. Kev.
I think it also goes back to the destruction of the nuclear family.
Yep. Yep. Yes. Yes. You remember the BLM, and again, this is not about BLM and not being political, but I just remember it from reading on the BLM website. One of their tenets was the disruption of the nuclear family. They said we need to get rid of this idea that there's a mom and a dad and children under the mom and dad. Anyways, Steve?
I was thinking work.
Workism. Our American culture has shaped us to, actually, that's in a quote later. I'm going to, all right. I'm doing well. This is just suggestion time. Any other ideas as to why church is being made a lower priority? Adam?
Probably because of the antinomianism, as I learned in ethics and etiquette class back in college.
Yeah.
Antinomianism means no moral absolute.
Right. So antinomianism has different manifestations, right? Some people say, oh, nothing matters. Nothing's right or wrong, right? Within Christianity, antinomianism is basically saying we can sin freely that grace may abound. And Paul says, God forbid, right? Anybody else? Sure.
Well, I don't know how to put it into words, but do you really want to go to a church that's got a BLM sign on the lawn and a trans flag hanging? You know, I mean, to me, it's like you have to have clear ideas of what's right and wrong.
Yes. That really bleeds into the other of my 2 points this morning. Yeah, well said. Yes. There's some others. Amber.
I'm not going too far away, but the learning to interact with other people is it's something that's actually taught to you. And if you don't have those people that teach you how to interact with other people and how to communicate well with other people, then you don't even know how to do it well.
Yeah.
And then you're left feeling very cast out.
Yeah.
And a lot of churches they won't cater to you not fitting inside of those norms. Like
That's huge.
You have to come and you have to do your part, but if you are someone for whatever reason that doesn't fit into those things, then you may not find anyone who is willing to reach out to you.
So I'm going to repeat that for those who didn't hear. I'm going to summarize. Basically, how to interact interpersonally with other people is a learned behavior, not always an instinctive one. Right? Some people are gregarious from the word go. Believe it or not, I wasn't. I was very sheltered. I was very awkward. I'm still awkward, but all through high school, I didn't talk to people. I wanted to be left alone. Even as I went into college is where I first began to come out of my shell. Then I left the shell way too far behind. And anyhow, but it's a learned behavior. So Amber stated that a lot of times you come into church and people, there might be an underlying assumption that's been brought to church. Remember last week's sermon, what are you bringing to church? Sometimes we bring those assumptions to church that if you aren't walking up, hey, brother, how you doing? It's a great day. Give God the glory. Hey, man. You know what I mean? Elvis, I don't know. All right. Then you're like, and there's like, oh, that person's not fun to be around. Well, maybe the idea of community isn't that everybody can be fun to be around. Maybe we've exalted fun. You know what I'm saying? But our society is very, very conducive to exalting fun over anything else. Kevin.
You just said it, but I think the abandonment of community. There's no community.
Nailed it. So that's one of my 2 points. That's the very word I use is community. Community. Kim.
The lack of trust.
Oh, well said. Truly, well said. Is trust earned or not? Trust is earned. Trust is earned. But also, sometimes you got to give people the opportunity to earn your trust. For the balance, right? Sometimes somebody says, well, trust is earned. And I say, you've been married 3 years. You haven't earned it by now, right? I'm just saying. Steve.
I was thinking hypocrisy too.
Yep, hypocrisy.
False churches,
Yep.
and people look at that and say, why do I want to go to church?
Yep. Yeah. Especially like, and that is a scapegoat, and very rightfully so, a scapegoat of the next generation leaving church. As they come to church and they see people, praise God from whom all blessings flow, and then they go out to Golden Corral and leave a $1 tip and curse out people for being in there on Sundays instead of in church. You know what I'm saying? It's hypocrisy. It's gross. What they see is what Jesus saw when he came to earth. And he wanted to root it out from the inside. He said it's like a grave filled with dead man's bones. It's just whitewashed to look nice on the inside or on the outside. Brian, did you have a hand up?
Yeah.
Then
I
Pearl.
was thinking that maybe for some people that church and the idea of having faith in something that maybe you can't quite see or completely understand, replaced by like a scientism or science.
Yes. Oh boy. Yes. You hit the nail on the head. That's the huge thing for me. I'm a skeptical and materialistic guy by nature. If I can't see it, touch it, feel it, smell it, I have a hard time. And so for me, it takes a lot more faith to be a Christian than it might for somebody else. But it might take a lot less faith for me to do other things, and it takes a lot more faith for you, right? For some people, the leap into Christianity is the bunny hop. For other people like me, it's an Indiana Jones jump, right? But the point is that we all take the leap. You see, it's okay to admit that. It's okay to talk about that. And for some people, to them, it's not an abdication of anything, right? But for me, I say, oh man, I'm used my whole life. I'm used to putting my trust in barometers, and you know what I mean. And now I say, well, now you do the research. I think you will find very intellectually credible reasons for being a Christian, but it just takes more work. You see, and a lot of people aren't willing to put in the work, and that's another thing completely. Pearl.
I think it's important to pass it on from generation to generation.
Huge.
Like the Bible says, you teach it to your kids. Also, being the kind of Christian that is a hypocrite. So when the younger generation are watching you
Yep.
and they're seeing all the different
Yep. It's huge.
aspects of what you're saying.
Yep. Kevin touched on that this morning, didn't he? You have people watching you. And the next generation is one of those people. And if we don't faithfully pass down, guys, if 3 pages of this hymnal is the truth, and I pass somebody this thing and say, this is what I believe, and this is what our family does, and this is what you have to believe, that's not fair to them. I need to let them fill out the other pages themselves and hand them the 3 pages and say, this is true. You know what I'm saying? That's what Peter meant when he was preaching on Pentecost. He said, it's a yoke our fathers weren't able to bear. You took a good thing and you loaded it with a bunch of garbage. Not garbage, but garbage because it was destined to fail. Don't look in the mirror on the Sabbath. Come on. All right. So those are some immediate suggestions. I know there's more out there. But if I predicted right, I said in my notes, Pastor Michael says, I'll have heard issues relating to both wokeism and workism and everything in between. And we did. Perhaps the best way to explore any issue is to examine it from both sides. In this case, we say, yes, the world and its allurements, entertainment, too much work, the characterization of anti-intellectualism, all of these things, yes, they're a substantial reason, but is there any opportunity to do better on our end? And I think we cover some of those too. This is a good question to ask, and how we answer it matters. Fun exercise. What is not a good way to answer this question? In other words, if I were to look at this church and I were to say, oh man, Christianity's falling apart. What can we do to make it, what's the bad way to answer that question? Kev?
Heavy-handed over restraint.
Heavy-handed over restraint. I actually did not expect to hear that. That's very good. That's very good. To veer in this direction and say, well, then we must not be keeping the walls high enough. Right? Is that where you're steering at? Yeah. And I'll tell you what's happening is we're dropping the ball. We're lowering the standard. We're taking our hand off the plow. You know what I'm saying? And we say, well, we must not have been strict enough. That's a very good answer for a bad answer. You know what I'm saying? Well said. Amber?
Criticizing everyone who won't come in or leaves for saying that, well, it's because they just don't love God. They can't handle truth. They don't want to, and never reflecting on what might be happening
Yeah.
within the church that might be making worse.
So in Nuthetics, they call that bad boy in a corner. Nuthetic counseling, like biblical counseling, it's called bad boy in a corner, where you're standing in a corner, you're completely cornered in, and all you can do is just lash out. You're just lashing, taking your little Indiana Jones whips. Sorry, Kevin gave me the idea of Indiana Jones. I did the Indiana Jones lump. Now I'm doing Indiana Jones, or not lump, jump, and all the whips. But you're just lashing out, and you're saying, well, it's all those kids. Those kids weren't taught to respect authority. They weren't taught to obey, and they sure weren't taught to come to church. And I blame. Okay, but then look at what we're doing. We're now taking our eyes off of our own responsibility, because the question was, what can we do? And how often do we do that, especially in marriages? What can I do? We immediately go, well, right? What can we do with the church? Right, yes. And we tend to blame shift. And again, are there faults out there? Absolutely. But Amber's point is so good, is that we tend to say, what can we do better? And then we immediately put the weight on somebody else. Completely subverting and yeah, anyways, Kim then Steve.
Bring in the entertainment.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I thought was going to be the first answer, right? Bring in entertainment. What do we have to do? Well, let's take a look at what's satisfying the world, what they like, and let's provide an experience. I'm going to move right along, Steve.
Yeah, we need more programs.
Yeah, more programs. Right, more programs. Now, is there anything wrong with programs? No. Is there anything wrong with using the screens to sing? Yeah, we were going to sing. No, there's nothing wrong with that. We were going to sing Give Thanks with a Grateful Heart, on karaoke. Karaoke, I know it's got connotations, right? I think of, anyway. But there I go with the 80s references again. But anyhow, no, it's a karaoke. They sing along songs on the screen. Those are good. Those are good. In fact, during the Give Thanks song, if you listen closely, you'll be able to hear the and I'm like, oh my goodness. I felt like I had to turn my head around backward or something. Like get a piercing. I felt so rebellious. You know what I mean? Like wear cut off jeans, right? I felt very rebellious. No, but like there's nothing wrong with like a nice drum or like there's nothing wrong with that at all. And a lot of times what people would say is, oh, well, you're changing just so you can change with the times to be trendy. No, we're changing because we live in the 21st century and we don't want to be stuck in the 1920s. Trendiness works both ways. You can be trendy back or trendy forward. How about you be timeless now? That's all I've got to say about that, right? So good not answers. Yes, Cheryl.
Don't reach out. That's a great way to not get people.
Yeah. Boy, Christianity is failing. Hey, should we invite people? Should we print out little cards that have our website and invitation? No. That's a fool's errand. It will surely come to naught, this I say, unto thee this day. He just got done watching a documentary about castles. That's why he talks that way. But like, yeah, that's a great way to make sure you don't. Yeah, it's a great way to. So,
Events in the building so people can come.
100%. Ooh, yes. Speaking of which, August 3rd, we have an event in this building. All right, no. And I thank you for that, Cheryl, for opening that door up. So yeah, these are not good answers to the question. So good answers on the not good answers, for sure. So if you can't beat them, join them mentality is wrong, I agree. So then what is a good answer to the question we posed? And again, I feel like we've already talked about these, so I'm not going to elongate here. But when we say what's going on with the church at large, with the church Catholic, not capital C Catholic, little c Catholic, we're going to be okay. That word just means everywhere, okay? What's going on with the church Catholic? What's going on with the church worldwide? Really, I'm not going to say worldwide. That's not appropriate. I'm going to say in America, right? Because that's where I live and that's what I know about. Because worldwide, there's all kinds of things happening. What's going on? We've already, I think one way or another, we have posed good answers to these a minute ago when we talked earlier about kind of diagnosing what's going on. So I have heard some good suggestions, and here's my two. And I want to take a look at the early church's commitment to both of these. Number one, a commitment to truth. The church that Jesus built was firmly committed to the truth. Well, the church in America is falling apart, and I think that what has happened is in a reaction to the church falling apart, as it were, they say, well, let's take it a little bit easier on speaking out on some things that are true. Let's play that a little bit close to the vest. We're not going to put it in our church statement of faith. We're just going to kind of be welcoming and inviting. And here's the problem. That is a great way to shoot yourself in the foot. Because not only, listen please, not only when you hold back the truth or hide the truth, you stop to be the kind of church that Jesus built, but you've also removed the reason people are looking to come to church in the first place. You may think that you're some marketing genius when you go, well, you know what? Let's just call it the huddle. Come to the huddle, which is fine. If there's a church that calls itself the huddle and it's a good church, I don't care. I'm just saying, for me, if somebody's like, well, don't you want to rebrand or rename? I have no problem renaming or rebranding. Let's go biblical. Let's call it the church at Topsum. I don't care. But one thing I'm not going to do is say, what's the world doing? What's working for them? Have you noticed that they make really bad marketing mistakes too? Just ask my friend named Dylan, right? You know what I'm saying? Come on, guys. Yeah, they make terrible marketing mistakes as well. What happened is can I use a beer brand as an example? They lost sight of their roots. They lost sight of what their market was, which, to be honest, it's not exactly connoisseurs, right? Come on, guys. These are guys who like Clydesdales, guns, wagons, and red, white, and blue. Nothing wrong with that in the world. Come on. Drink up, right? But then they said, listen carefully, then they said, oh, our market share is taking a dip because of increased competition from other beer brands, because people don't, you know what I'm saying? Let's do something to garner, to glean, to reach out and get more, right? And as you know, plummeted, right? Plummeted. Now, what happened was, in an attempt to broaden their appeal, they took their identity and they sacrificed it to get that appeal. And they won the appeal. Truly, they did. A lot of people from their intended market responded favorably. But then when they recoiled and said, no, this was a bad move, then they lost that market and they still don't have this market back. You know what I'm saying? They doubled down. Now, and I think another great example is Disney. I'm not going to go into that in much depth, right? But what's happening is you get people and they come into these positions of power and authority and they go, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make this tweak and we're going to make this tweak and then we're going to have our not so secret agenda and then we're going to do this, and this, and then we're going to offer this. And man, I'm telling you, families are going to love it. No, they won't, because you've been believing what you've been reading on HuffPost and CNN that they're going to love it, but they don't love it because real families aren't that way. In reality, people still want to be told the truth. They do. Now, you say, now, come on, Britt, I know that's not true. No, hang in there. I'm going to come back to that one in a second. I'm just going to say it if I remember it. Jesus himself said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me, right? Jesus himself says, sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is truth. We just sang a song about the truthful law of God. Are you with me? And then Jesus taught us to love the truth. The scriptures, from Proverbs to Paul, are replete with examples of the value and virtue of truth. So, we're told by our society that no one really wants the truth. Pay attention to this. You've got to. We're told no one really wants the truth. And sometimes it seems true because we'd rather make our own, right? I walk around and I say, well, 2 and 2 is 4. And somebody goes, well, my truth is 2 and 2 is 3.975. And if I say otherwise, I'm a number phobe. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what I'm afraid of, but it's apparently the pejorative term used these days to insult and denigrate. But here's the thing. We'd rather make our own. But examples abound. Please listen. Examples abound that the contrary exists as well. Can you think of any examples where, besides the Bud Light thing, that's a bit of a micro scale. If you can't, that's okay. But I can think of a few, or at least a couple, where we are told that society says, we want to make our own truth. We don't want 2 + 2 = 4. We don't want anything of God's ideals that are taught in the scripture. We don't want it. We want to redefine it. And we're told that that's the thing. That's the majority of America. But I think it's about 3 to 4%, the loud minority. I think in real life, most people still want the truth, even if they themselves are holding up the picket signs and posting on social media and making the biggest hoopla about all whatever their views are, I think deep down inside, there's still a desire for the truth. Now, they may not know what the truth is, but most people, I think, want the truth. Inasmuch as when someone chooses to try to play by their own rules or redefine reality, don't let me lose you, please don't let me lose you. When someone tries to redefine reality, notice how they say, oh, I know that's the truth, but I'm doing it this way. No, they want to say this is my truth because they still want the truth. They just want it to be theirs. Are you following me so far? So if you can think of one, what's an example of where people say, yeah, we need to cater to the world. But in reality, the opposite has actually been true and has been much more successful, right? Oh, yeah, that's a pretty cool example, actually. Wow, that's actually a very cool example. I wouldn't have thought of that in a million years. So electric vehicles, right? Somebody said, I want an electric vehicle. The whole world's saying electric vehicles are great. But who's buying them? It's funny because if many people that say, we want to care for the environment, and I'm all about caring for the environment. Truly, I am. I think there's actually some real opportunities for improvement in environmentalism. And you might even paint me a liberal if I told you some of them. I think about the environment a lot. And I think humanity does a great job really messing it up sometimes. Absolutely true. We're called to be stewards of the earth, not exploiters of it, okay? But for everybody who shouts about this stuff, and especially when people, they talk about like we want to reduce jet emissions, and then all 50 of these world leaders fly to these summit on planes. I'm just saying there's some irony there, right? So that's a great example, I think. And yeah, a couple of other hands, Cheryl.
I think about Jason Aldean's song. If
Yeah.
he had just had a song and people accepted it, that the truth is when you live in a place where you care about people,
Yep.
You're going to take care of them.
Yep.
And actually, you could have said, instead of a town, you could have said a neighborhood,
Sure.
you know?
Try that in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood.
Right.
Daniel Tiger, come and claw you up.
But the thing was that people started saying it was racist,
Right.
and people picked up on that because that was not the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why there was such a huge backlash.
Yep.
Is because people knew that wasn't the truth.
And here's the thing, Jason Aldean's song, we're talking about try that in a small town. It doesn't mirror my pacifist values. Nor was it some racist, homophobic rant.
No.
He was just saying, and you know what he was saying. We've all heard about it. It's been through the news cycle 30 times. But what Jason Aldean's wife said was actually on point. She said, you've taken this and you've tried to fit it into your perverse narrative. And everybody says, we need more of this. But look at what the number one song is right now. It seems that maybe we're being told that a lot of people don't want the truth when they really do. And how people live actually does reflect those values as opposed to maybe what the loudest voices on the news are saying. Steph and Kev.
I was going to say the education, our school system, our public school system.
Yep.
Is very much like that too. And I also was thinking, the other thought that popped in my head, kind of about what she was saying, and I really think about all of it, is it's distracting you from what's actually going on.
Yep.
To get confused,
Yep.
confuse you and take you off course and upset people.
Yep.
And so that they don't pay attention to the big picture that's really going on.
Sure. Distraction. That's a great point. And we could go in education there on a very small scale, 20 seconds, 10 seconds. A lot of times they say, well, we need this in our education. We need this in our education. But where do children most flourish? When there's basic reading, writing, arithmetic. And most parents, what do they look for? They don't want the hogwash. They want their kid to receive a solid education. They want the truth. And the truth works better than the lies. I only have time for just a couple more. Kev.
We need to stop using petroleum products. No plastic.
No plastic ever. Try that in a small town. Okay. No. Hey, I'd actually like to see using bamboo products more, but that's just me. Could you see how fast bamboo grows? I'm just saying there's something there. All right. Okay, let's move on from that. I want to give my example. There was a school that was on the verge of collapse. It was down to like 50 kids in 2010, and they were about to fall apart. Then they said, let's adopt a more rigorous classical education. And Father so-and-so brought back the Mass, and they brought back in rigidity, obligation, rules, objective standards of truth. And guess what? Now that school is filled to capacity with a wait list going out for years. So what does that tell you about what people actually want? They want the truth, guys. They do. And we need to stop apologizing for offering it.
Amen.
Amen. We amen together. Amen. Amber?
I think that also there's a lot of pushing different ideologies in schools. And I think actually teenagers are great truth seekers, but
Yeah.
they just don't have they don't have the place to find it right now.
That's you. That's everything. I didn't mean to interrupt. I thought you stopped.
But, so, I don't remember what I was going to say, but
I apologize.
it's okay.
To speak my truth.
Myself.
Oh, okay, to your throat. Yeah.
But the kids, the teenagers especially, they have all of this being pushed toward them from one side or the other. And a lot of times I notice they see through a lot of nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they see where you're not following through on what you're saying because it doesn't actually make sense.
Yep.
And so they reach towards something else and say, this makes sense. And so they're seeking for that truth. But the stuff that they're surrounded with, it's just not even there. When people seek the truth, and they do, and they will, they'll find it somewhere. And when they can see right through the thin veneer of anti-intellectualism that often roosts in our churches, they'll find it somewhere else. And when they go to churches and they're providing an experience and they're fun and they're happy, but when they don't speak the truth plainly, clearly, and unapologetically, people go, this is exactly the same as I had out there in the world. There's got to be something different, guys. And truth is it. What's the other one of the, where's my phone? Here we go. You guys got 10 more minutes in you? Enough of you do. All right, we're good. Okay. The second one is this. There's only 2 points. Here's the second of 2 points. A church that has a commitment to community, truth, and community. The expressive individualism of the day, manifested in social media and almost every written work, has decimated the idea of community. It has reshaped everything. Now, you guys talked about it. You guys all talked about it. Community. That the early church was centered in and flourished in community is undeniable. I was going to go there. I'm going to quote it to you. In Acts chapter 2, you read, and I go to Acts 2:42 like every other week here. You know this, okay? What did the church do? They assembled regularly. To them, it was daily. They assembled at least on the Lord's Day. They had all things common. They relied on each other. They relied on each other, which means there has to be what Kim said, trust. They relied on each other. I did a ton of research on this one particular community that started in Germany. There's like Brotherhaus, which stands for Brother House. And it's these Christians who said, we're going to take this seriously and sell everything we have. And they live in these communities. And it was torn apart by Adolf Hitler. And then it was reassembled by the Quakers, Mennonites, and Catholics. And now there's branches in America, England, and like 3 other countries, including Germany. And even today, these churches meet and they live in the same house. I don't know who owns that house if you all have to sell your stuff. So there's a little bit of inconsistency there, right? But they all live in this house and they all share their things. They share their healthcare, they share their stuff, and it works. At some point, it will fall apart. I think it's an extreme example and doesn't exactly work in the 21st century capitalist America. However, there is something to be said for the strength of communities. Christianity was not intended to be lived outside of a community. By that, I don't mean Christianity was not intended to be lived without coming to church once in a while. When you are a Christian, you are a part of that community. And what does that mean? What does it mean in any sense to be full or to be part of a community? Well, what are some examples? What are some examples of what it means to be part of a community in any sense? Membership in a gym, member of a town or a nation. What are some examples? Let's go quick. I told you 10 minutes. I want to keep that as much as I can. Adam.
Sometimes community in churches can be misdefined because some people would say that community it's fitting that person's mold. For example, like when I was in college and the guy was saying he led a couple people to Christ, and I wasn't as excited as he was, and he jammed me against the bunk bed because I said that's good, and he's like, no, that's great. You want to be as excited as he was.
I understand. Those are some of the shortcomings. But what I guess the question is, let me rephrase. Like if you could fit in like a word or two What does it mean to be a part of a community? In any sense, Steve? Spending time together. Cheryl?
I was gonna say participation.
She said it first because her hand was up. I'm sorry. Participation, spending time together. Yeah, giving back, being a part. Tobe? Charity. Steph?
What Kim said, trust.
Trust. Ron? What is it? Volunteering. Yes, these are things. Ray? Strength. Yeah, Amber? Forgiveness. Long suffering. You say, yeah, brother, it's 11:05. We're long suffering for 10 more minutes. Then we're short suffering. You know what I'm saying, right? Okay, I get it. We're good. Emma? Caring. Yeah. These are things we do. Adam? Empathy. Yes. Here's the best part. You know what we've done? Listen, this is the part you're not going to like, but it's going to be okay. If I keep hiking these pants up, I'm going to be like, all right. I just keep pulling them up higher and higher to stand on a chair. Anyways, they're pretty white. This guy hasn't gone out a lot this summer. Anyways, community. What the world has done is they have offered a false sense of community. You say, come on, Brett. Come with me. No. It's done exactly with community the same as it has with sex. You get all the fun parts of it with none of the responsibilities, duties, or obligations. Pay attention, please. This is important. Everything we can. Come on, guys. We do it with food, too. You get the deliciousness of a meal without the nutrients and the time it takes to prepare it. You know what I'm saying? Now, Michael Britt does not have a microwave in his house. That is not because Michael Britt thinks microwaves are bad. It is because microwave is not good for Michael Britt's weight. Because it's too quick and easy for me to throw in something that very few nutrients into a microwave. Beep, beep, beep. Kevin seems to do it at work all the time with popcorn. It's the only thing I use the microwave for. My witness is popcorn. Even my oatmeal, I go to the Keurig and pour hot water in from the Keurig. No microwave for me. I don't do it. Why? Because I think that is a perfect example. And for me, it's for weight control and discipline and all that. But it's a perfect example of our society. It microwaves everything. It microwaves everything, whether it's community, whether it's pleasure, whether it's food, every single thing. If you can get it as fast as possible with as low a price as possible, it wins the contest. And what churches have now done is they've joined in that contest. They've planted their feet in that arena and said, let's fight too. We're in it to win it. We're going to offer you the best sense of community with as few obligations and rules as possible. We're not going to keep you accountable. We're not going to ask where you were on Sunday. We're not going to say anything about giving any money to church. No. You just come in, hang your hat, and be all right. And what that does is it's actually not what people want, even if it's what you think you want. Just saying. Why is it that even, like, remember Cheers, where everybody knows your name? If Norm hadn't have come in, guess what people would have been doing? Where's Norm? The bad attitude would have been like, well, Norm has the spiritual responsibility not to forsake the assembling of the booths together, right? But the right way to say it is, hey, where's Norm? I love him, I care about him, and I like it when he's here, and I like being here with him because we got to stick together around our common ideal. Imagine that. Imagine that. Community. And again, what community can you belong to that doesn't have any requirements of you at all? Please. What community can you belong to that doesn't have any requirements of you at all? I can think of some. Facebook, TV. I can watch whatever I want, whenever I want, post whatever I want. There's no requirements, no membership fees, no dues. You just sell your personal information to pay your fee on Facebook. You know what I'm saying? Listen, please, very carefully. If you're using something for free, you are not the customer. You're the product being sold. I'm just saying. And what happens is our society has said, oh, there you go. Let's just have a community where there's really you just kind of come and no, that's not a community. That's I don't know what it is, but it's not a community. It certainly isn't the church that Jesus built. The church that Jesus built was one where we entered into a covenant together and said, I'm going to be here. You're going to be here. We're going to see this thing through together. Can you imagine entering into a marriage and said, I'll show up when I want? And again, this isn't me coming down on people who miss a service or two. No, that's not what this is about at all. But what it is saying, we are together. We're in this together. And if you want to be a part of community and experience community to the fullest, you don't just get to pick and choose the parts you like. We plunge in together through thick and thin, faithfully together. That's what a community is. Let me finish up. And you're like, we're not stopping you. All right, good. Here we go. Community, with all its obligations, was once the heart of any society, whether family or church or town assembly, now it's discarded as nothing more than an optional crutch, a difficult and cumbersome add-on. But this has had myriad destructive effects. Let me quote this guy. Listen to this quote. He says this: "Work in a community is judged not by the money it generates, but by the people it serves." In a workist culture that believes dignity is grounded in accomplishment, simply reclaiming this alternative form of dignity becomes a radical act. And I would say a radical act of resistance. Guys, in our society, you go in, you clock out, and I earned X amount of dollars today and I accomplished something. But in a community, the value of your accomplishment isn't on what you brought in for yourself, it's how you can use that to help others. Kim.
Ask not what your country can do for you, but community.
And what happened to that guy? And what happened to that guy? I'm not going to go as far as to say it was the CIA, but that dude was taken out. I'm just saying, guys, come on. And again, I'm not conspiracy theory. I'm just saying, what happened to that guy? He was shot. I'm not saying for that, but somebody didn't like him. And here's the thing. Somebody might say, this sounds an awful lot like communism. Yeah, on a national scale, this stuff doesn't work because we don't all unify around the same ideals. You say, well, late-stage capitalism and democracy stinks. Sure it does, but it still smells better than all the other alternatives. I'm with you, okay? But in a church community, guys, that's how it's supposed to work. We lean on each other. We help each other. We all contribute. That's why communism fails, guys. That's why communism fails, because only 3% contribute. And you're forced to, which makes it a lot less fun. Come on, guys. It's all over the... Anyway. All right, so let's wrap it up. What is the takeaway? Britt, you might get us out on time. Well, hang in. What is the takeaway? Both truth and community have duties attached to them. They're not easy. They don't hardly fit into our simple paradigms or easy lifestyle. They require us to reshape and surrender and work. Does that make sense? With truth and community, there are expectations. There are stringent requirements that exist outside of ourselves. There are moral duties and obligation. So let's answer the question. I'm not going to ask what are examples of this because we already talked about that. Whether it's a gym or there's always something obligating on you. And we go, oh, I don't like that pressure. Then you'll never be able to be part of any meaningful community. Ever. You'll never have a job. You'll never have a family. Guess what? As a part of my home community, I'm required to be a father and a husband. As an employee of the Brackley Electric community, I'm required to clock in. You understand what I'm saying? Well, I don't like responsibilities and obligation. Then no. That is absolutely our incoming generation. I have seen more than one TikTok being dismantled by the likes of Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles as they watch these guys and they go, I have to work for 8 hours a day? I don't even want to live. Yeah, dude. And be thankful it's only 8. There's a lot of people who have to work 14, 16, 19, 20, 22 hours a day. Life is work. Life is hard. And if churches say we're going to be the one place where you can escape from all that, what we're creating is something that's not real, not helpful, and not building up to anybody.
Amen.
And it won't be able to sustain itself.
Right.
So, question, are there churches and institutions and even families that have begun to operate without these paradigms? Sure. Well, our children, oh, no, I can't. I don't have time. Y'all, I don't have time, but it would have been fun. Well, our workplace, how well did Twitter do when the employee could just go in and out anytime and just like spend 7 hours playing foosball and 1 hour maybe working on a project? It doesn't work. It doesn't. It may work for a time. You may say, oh, this works for us. But there's a collapse, an inevitable collapse at the end. I hope you're with me. And Twitter's an example. I don't hate Twitter, or X as it is now. So how's it going for them? Not well. Here's the summary. Churches are hemorrhaging people, not because they're holding on to these two things, but because they're letting them go. That's the summary. That's the plot. Churches go, well, we're not letting go of truth. In fact, we're kind of just saying, hey, no. Please listen, just like my wife said, that operates on two extremes. Just like Kevin said, that operates on two extremes. You can say, well, churches are letting go of the truth, so we're going to hold on to it. No, what that's called is your own personal preferences that you're masquerading as truth. That's not the way either. Are you with me? The way is truth. Truth. No wonder Jesus said it's narrow. More than ever, we need to hold on to and dedicate ourselves to both of these. A society of spoiled children rejects the obligations of both. And a culture of legalistic power mongers exploits the duties of both. I don't have time to delve into all that. I did promise 10 minutes, and it has been like 13. Thanks for your patience. So a Christ-centered church embraces both with charity, kindness, and commitment now more than ever. Yes, you're going to read polls that say, churches are falling apart. The young people are leaving the churches. So now more than ever, we say, we believe the truth, no more, no less. And we have a community, a real community, where you can belong and pitch in and find a place and become a part of something, a contributing, functioning part of something. That's what Jesus was talking about when he said, fitly joined together and compacted, right? We're all playing a part. We all have our gifts to use. I do have bonus quotes about community, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not. I have 2 more. They're really good. And if you want to read them, I'll go over them with you later. But I want to keep it short because I made a promise. All right, Steve.
Wasn't it Paul that said, that's me, I preach Christ?
Yeah, that's a great way. That's even better than my 2 quotes. Jesus said, we preach Christ. We preach Christ. Somebody says, oh, I really don't know. Just here at the Topsom Baptist Church, we preach Jesus. Well, I think Donald Trump, that's a great conversation for some time down the road, but not up here. You know what I'm saying? We preach Jesus. We preach the truth. And we are a community. I really believe that's all you need. I really do. Speaking of community, one of the ways that churches share as a community is by enjoying the Lord's Supper together. It's a meal that we were never meant to take in isolation. If you are a believer and you are a baptized Christian, I invite you to participate in the memory that we have of Jesus Christ, in his body that was broken and his blood that was spilled out for you. This is